Hi, it's Hazel. Welcome to my channel. If you are an existing subscriber, thanks for tuning back in. If you have stumbled across me by accident, welcome. I hope you choose to subscribe. Today is going to be a maybe a little more low-key. You know, sometimes days in the studio where you can't really muster up more energy and creativity than gluing stuff down or cutting stuff up. It's kind of one of those days. So anyone who has ever owned or purchased a vintage Reader's Digest condensed book knows how poorly they were made, how cheaply they were made. And I'm especially talking about the newer ones, the ones that have those solid colored covers with a fair bit of gilt decoration on them. Not the old ones with the patterned covers and the more reinforced spines. We know that those pages really, I mean, the paper wasn't great. You can just tell that by how much it has yellowed when it's, you know, you can have paper that is 100 years old that has stood up better than some of this stuff. But that's fine. I mean, it gives a certain look. Goodness knows there's lots of them. They were also all glued in as opposed to sewn in, which of course, you know, is, I guess, a good or bad thing depending on how you look at it, or for different purposes. The bindings on those solid colored covers also tend to break very easily, so you probably own some of those. You've probably seen some of those in thrift stores and so on. One of the best things about them, though, are the illustrations. So if I have gutted a Reader's Digest book, one of the first things I usually do is, a purpose for that, is separate out the pages that have illustrations. And they could be small, like so, or they could be full page. And of course, depending on who the illustrator was, they tend to have very recognizable looks to them. There are also a lot of headshots of the authors. So I guess one or some of those days when I had several of these kinds of images, you know, torn out and kicking around, I began to use them in collages. See, there's so depending, like, I mean, I think this is a more attractive headshot than a photo, but you can just tell that, you know, they obviously happened at different times in the history of these condensed books. Anyway, I was just showing you sort of the current pile of some of these things, and I mean, that's a lot of paper there. So anyway, what I did was basically sort through where can I put this? Sort through a bunch of them. And let me just make sure we're kind of, you can see what's what. And I did some collages. Now, if you, I'm sure by now you've seen or heard about videos where people are using usually oversized kids' books in which to make their collages, leave them in the book until they're needed because it's an easy way to store them. Usually backing them as well, right then and there, so there's less warpage of the paper. Anyway, this is, I'll just get past this. And okay, so beginning here are some collages that I put together using Reader's Digest illustrations. So you can see that the you know, basically the thinking has been done for us. If we stick to the same, well, if we confine ourselves to a particular story, then obviously the illustrations all have a theme, a color theme, and a color style. I mean, an illustration style that is consistent. Now, I don't know, because it's a while since I've done these, whether the style of illustration is the same in the entire volume. But if it isn't, then clearly a person could find more of the same sorts of colors either in other books, or they could be worked into a collage, not like I've done here, which is plaster the whole collage just using those images, but they could instead be used, like, so for instance, looking through this pile, suppose I really like that particular color, but who knows, maybe the next one isn't quite as good. I mean, the theme here is I don't know, maybe these are mixed up now. Let's see if there's any rhyme or reason to what I have here. Well, these should be the same because it's the same book. Not as a stranger. Not as a stranger. Not as a stranger. So the style is the same, but the colors are not quite. But maybe there's enough of a connection there that a person could use. Well, let me just separate them and see. Okay, these are all from the same story. So, and who knows, maybe we'll have time. Maybe we'll have time to do something with those. But the point I was trying to make is if there weren't, here's another one, if there weren't enough of the, if there weren't enough illustrations that kind of look like they go together, then a person could use them more like a focal point. Anyway, so this is one of them. And you can see that I didn't pay that much attention. Okay, so this one obviously is a mansion. I glued it in upside down. I guess because I wanted the color distribution to be where it is. Here's another one. Probably not all from the same story, because there are these storks or whatever here and here. But there's enough of that green carrying through and some of that blue to make it work. Here's another one. Again, these pastel kind of neutrally colors. There's some guys fishing. There's a car. There's a guy in his underwear and a tie and a fedora fishing. This one is more about a family life and this almost like dollhouse effect. This one might be odds and ends that were left over from some of the other pages that were done. And then of course that's it for that. So one of the things I tore out of this book just before turning on the camera is this one. And you can see that these were all skinny, or the illustration was, vertical as opposed to horizontal or full page. So what I thought I would do is show you how this particular masterboard or this particular style could be turned into something useful. And again, this is nothing new. You have all seen, where's my knife? You have all seen people cut up, create and cut up masterboards. if you've been watching videos for more than 15 minutes. I think what makes this a bit different is that it's, you know, essentially a, oh, did you just see that slide? Let's straighten this baby out. You know, and I think I've said this before, I always was a bit skeptical when I saw people using these sewing guides for cutting. But I thought, well, I found a bunch. Boy, this isn't a great demo of how to use one, is it? I found several of them at a thrift store and bought them because brand new, they're really quite expensive. So I thought, well, okay, you have it, use it, or at least give it the good old college try. So I have to say that there's definitely something to be said for using this particular tool, and they come in obviously different sizes and formats. The thing that's nice about them is that they're transparent. Like if I were to be trying to trim, I could certainly trim this with a ruler and a knife. If I wanted to do this at my desk. But the problem is that you need pretty well a steel ruler, because if you're cutting against a wooden one or a plastic one, chances are your knife is going to nick into the edge of the plastic. The other option, of course, is going to the, you know, the big cutter where you can kind of see what you're doing. The other advantage, of course, are all these markings. So they're basically 1/8 inch markings, and if you line up your edges, you know that it's going to be true because these are obviously all right angles. So and regardless of where, okay, so for instance, well, I should maybe cut off this edge here since it looks kind of a bit unusual with all the other saturated colors. So basically, I'm lining this up here on this red line. So I know that if this is a straight line, which it is, then anything that I cut on any of these on any mark along the way is automatically going to be nice and square. So I'm just going to cut this particular page into sort of 5 strips that represent the 5 different designs. Now, I haven't backed these, and I suppose that would have been maybe a more efficient way to do it, is back the entire page and then cut it up. But it, you know, that's one approach. I guess that would be wasted effort if in fact this became, you know, a tuck and was being glued down, then that wouldn't have been necessary. So again, do whatever seems to make the most sense to you in the moment. Sometimes we're just like really efficient crafting machines. Sometimes we are zoned out just gluing and cutting and you know, either way, I think because all of us love what we're doing, none of it really feels like work. So yeah, there's a fair bit of emphasis put on mask making and saving time and being efficient. But again, depending on why a person is even doing this in the first place. I mean, clearly if it's for sales purposes, then yeah, you need to kind of hustle and make every moment count. Now, if these were going to be used as bookmarks or tuck spots or whatever, I think almost without exception, they are so, they each tell a little bit of a story. The whole image is captured there. It is, I guess I'm just telling you what I see. And leading up to the idea that they don't need anything more. You know, maybe a person would choose to sew around them, around the corners, whatever. But to, you know, suddenly think, well, geez, I've got to put some book page on there, or I have to, you know, where's the requisite butterfly? Every tag has a butterfly on it, don't you know? It isn't true. I still feel like I want to trim some of that off. I think the trick to prevent the sliding that you saw happening earlier is to make sure that, you know, person's applying a fair bit of pressure. Boy, these fingernails, they've gotten long because I try to, you know, get my money's worth out of every nail appointment. So, yeah, overdue and not very easy to to make things happen. So, again, I'm not going to make you watch me cut up the other pages in that book. But what I did think I would do is, this is a clump of a book that just sort of fell apart as I was handling it. So I think someday I'm going to do something with all these heads. But anyway, this is an intact story here. And the illustrations are quite different. So I'm just going to kind of walk you through how I would. Now they're also quite small. And luckily they don't seem to really interfere with each other. Never throw something like that away. What I would do in a case like this is I would tear around each of these things because they are clearly all done in the same color and the same style. So even if there might not be enough square footage here in images to make a whole masterboard, and you can see a masterboard doesn't have to be full page. I didn't have a full page with these guys. So again, you're the master of your domain. As Seinfeld would say, you're a master of your domain. So you can decide how you use these things. Oh, okay, there might be a problem with this one. I like this because it looks like that evolutionary thing. So again, I want this to kind of be as even as possible. I'm lining it up in my grid, and I know that if I do that, it'll be good. And for now, I'll leave it that size. I'm also going to take this one from the bottom of the page because it was, because it matches. And then I'm going to flip the page over and see if there's anything to salvage on the other side. And because this is for collage purposes, I will grab these two as well. And sometimes you don't even need to worry too much about the grid on your board. or on your cutting mat, because if you line it up with the text, you should be fine. And then I guess, depending on whether your scrap papers are up to your ankles or up to your knees or up to your armpits, you will then know what you should do with this. If it should be thrown in the garbage, or if you need it very badly because you're only ankle deep in paper. So there were some of these that were sort of along the border, like this. So I'm going to obviously lose the one on the other side. But I like this because it's different. It's a bigger piece that would be used in a collage. And it was, set up vertically. So I definitely take that one. Nothing more there. This is pretty tiny, but I'll take it anyway. And of course, I'm cutting all the text off, or tearing all the text away, because that's what I want to do. If you wanted to keep the text around the images, then by all means do it that way. And in fact, I will probably, even at this point, remove the title and the page number. So this may not be the most attractive illustrations. These may not be the most attractive illustrations you've ever seen, but you are seeing the process. So the process would be the same regardless of. See, now this one, well, I'm cutting it around, I'm tearing it around the bigger image, but if I decided, oh, I really need something a lot darker than that, I would choose that side. Oh, I didn't realize there were so many that are kind of, one side is kind of buggering up the other side. And of course, a person doesn't need to use a tearing ruler at all. And if you end up with an image that is just partial, I'm sure you can figure out how to use them in a collage. Because in my opinion, the better designs are the ones where some of the images bleed off the edge of the page. So, where was that partial guy? So I wouldn't put this at the top of a collage page. I would put this at the bottom of the page, so it looks like, well, that was the natural end of the, that's the bottom of the tag, bottom of the page. So that's how I would do that, so it sort of makes a bit more sense. I think there's something extremely satisfying. I could also be folding these. I would just make sure that I fold them, again, because the paper is so poor. Maybe that's what I should do. It's a little faster. There is so much satisfaction in just cutting, tearing, and gluing. Oh, here's another good border. If you can hear, and hopefully you can't, if you can hear a tractor idling out in the yard, forgive me for that. It is a busy time of year, so while I'm cutting and pasting, hubby is out there. We're not particularly big grain farmers, but you know, it's always a worry and a challenge until the grain is in the, until the seed has been planted. So part of what comes with being smaller operators is that we don't have state-of-the-art, we don't have equipment from this decade or even of the previous decade. It all is a lot older, which means, of course, that we don't have those scandalous loan payments. What we have instead are bills for parts and repairs and things like that. So you can't have your cake and eat it too, kids. Not in this game anyway. So yeah, he's out there prepping equipment to get out into the field. We did have a bit of, and I don't think our rain gauge is out yet, but we had a bit of a shower overnight. Oh, too bad. Anyway, so, you know, I guess beggars can't be choosers. It was better than nothing, but it has been bone dry. Much of the province is under a wildfire advisory. The spring winds were, of course, the last thing that is needed when things are tinder dry and there are fires that are out of control. And of course, if you remember anything from science, you also know that fires make their own wind. So, and don't ask me how. I don't remember. I'm gonna cut this guy out and hopefully not lose much or any of that. Yeah, so hopefully, and for the first time today, I could smell smoke in the air, which means that the wind has turned or the fires are getting closer. I know that it has been hellish for those people who have had to think about evacuation or actually evacuate. Several years ago, there was an enormous fire that kind of really devastated the Fort McMurray area, which is in the oil sands part of the province. And so, of course, you know, they're, I think, about 5 hours or so north of Edmonton. So getting people out that distance was an odyssey in itself. And then, of course, is the city ready to receive them? So I saw a guy on TV, an emergency response guy on TV, saying that a lot of the lessons that were learned from that experience got implemented immediately. And, you know, things will be, or already are, a lot better. In terms of them being ready with cots and food and pet food and all of that jazz, because of course one of the first things that people grab are their pets. I know there was also a call for people who had the ability or the equipment to help move livestock, because that's the other thing. If you're a cattle farmer, you need to save your herd, and that, you know, either takes trailers or people on horseback or whatever. So yeah, it's scary. It is, and I'm, you know, in landlocked Alberta. You know, we have rivers and lakes and so on, but there's no ocean. There's no so the chances that we would ever have to deal with, like, we're probably, I don't know, 10, 15 miles from the North Saskatchewan River. So the chances that we would ever have to deal with flooding are, next to none. Although, what else can global warming throw at us? So, I know too much water coming too fast can obviously be really devastating as well. And we only have to think back to that tsunami. I don't think most of us even knew what the word tsunami, that the word tsunami existed or what it meant until that Christmas, however many years ago, when we saw those people being devastated in Southeast Asia. So anyway, my point is that fire, I think in many ways, is more unrelenting and more destructive because, fire can be anywhere. And the fuel for it is everywhere. So, I don't know. Anyway, didn't mean to turn this into a meteorological or climate or whatever conversation, or be a downer in that way. But boy, it's hard not to think about one's fellow citizens when so much of the province is in jeopardy. How are we doing for time? Do we have time to start well, we're at the 32-minute mark, so it's probably time to shut her down for today. But you can see out of that one story, now mind you, this one is a bit different because it's got the blue running through it, but here are a lot of images that, let's just quickly and roughly lay this out and see. On something like this, I left the text thinking that, other images can overlap it. But you can see, even with this, with this few images, there's probably actually almost more than enough here to cover this one page. So again, the conventional wisdom around collage is you don't spend a lot of time thinking. So maybe, while I'm putzing around with these, why don't I just glue a few down? There is no, again, it should be kind of really random. Oops. And it should be kind of satisfying to do. Where's the edge of my page here? And it should be quick, it should be easy, and it's definitely not the final step. So a person can obviously, see, I typically don't like a sharp line like that, so I would just break off a piece of this brittle paper. And it's kind of nice when the sort of the edge that has been discolored with age is visible, at least at the perimeter. Now, normally I wouldn't be gluing right on this page, but it will end up getting all covered with glue, so for now I still have some area to work on. Okay, we have these guys here. I think this would be fine here, but again, let's use this one instead because it already has a torn edge. Let me grab a glue paper. So again, you know, I'll see how this looks when it's done. It might be, you know, ready to go just as it is. I don't worry about getting too close to the top of the page because I know that I'm just going to be, let me see, just going to be ripping it out. So chances are, you know, it doesn't matter if I have a 1/4 of an inch or whatever at the top that is not covered because, like, so what? I won't be able to use that bit there anyway. Make a little order here. Okay. And again, the only thing I would kind of be thinking about here is distribution of dark. Because some of these, you know, that has next to no dark values on it, whereas something like this is almost solid. So, oh, maybe I should put this guy here, or I could put it here. Well, no, I'll put it at the end. I lose part of that darkened edge, but that's okay. You want to be Speedy Gonzales when you do this. And maybe I'll put this at the top. And sometimes it's a good idea to have your, you know, extend past the edge of the page because that can be neatened up once you tear the page out and begin trimming, as you saw me do with the what else? Not exactly demoing the Speedy Gonzales part, am I? Just gonna anyway, I hope that you have found satisfaction and relaxation in doing collages. I know some people, I mean, I hear this through the grapevine, that some people, you know, feel like, oh, they just can't collage, but I don't buy that, guys. I think everybody can collage. I think that sometimes maybe, you know, we're not as happy with some results as we are with others, but that doesn't mean that it's not good. Where was that little guy that I had? Oh, I said I was going to put this guy at the bottom of the page. Why don't I get rid of this and I have a little more room to maneuver here? Instead of fighting my setup. I think that in a case like this, a person should remember that even though some of these illustrations may seem a bit bizarre, what will unify this page is the fact that, I should put something bigger down, that the color. And of course, it's always possible to... Why am I trying that hard to cover that text? I don't really need to, I don't think. Yeah, the thing that will unify it is the color. And of course, if it looks kind of strange when it's all done, remember that it is just one one layer, one element. You see what I mean about how this paper is just so... It's kind of a little too regular for my liking. Anyway, I don't need to finish this in front of you. You've all seen countless collage videos, I'm sure. The other thing that is automatically happening here is that because there are different color variations, you know, that, and I'm talking now about the background color, there's automatically some of that happening, you know, just by, almost by accident. That there's that sort of variegated thing happening, even though the color family is the same, publication is the same, illustrator is the same, everything is the same, just the way the paper has aged automatically adds some interest. It's also a good idea to stagger, you know, where the seams are, so to speak, because that too, it keeps it from looking too much like a grid and more random. And again, unless you're using your masterboard as a signature page, then it's going to be cut up into pieces. And so I guess that's another reason not to spend too much time debating what to put where, because in fact it's not going to matter once it's all chopped up. And so far on this one, I have kept everything upright. So I haven't turned any pieces on their sides or on their edges. And that too is a creator or a maker choice. Sometimes I very deliberately keep switching things up because that's what I want in that particular case. And sometimes you do it because of, you know, color distribution. Sometimes you do it because color or pattern distribution. Could be a couple of the reasons. Sometimes maybe you want to obscure things, or you want to, keep people from being able to perhaps read something. My house of cards is shifting here. I think most people begin their collages from the inside and work their way out. I'm sorry, I said the exact opposite of what I meant there. I think most people do their collages from the outside and work their way in. I should actually challenge, this is done. I should actually challenge myself to do it the other way around and see how that goes. Oh, not there. This is a mannequin, by the way, not a naked lady. Kind of want something vertical here too. Maybe this one is better because it's a little bigger. Anyway, I hope this encourages you to, see, I don't particularly like, so even by sliding it over that 1/8 of an inch, I kept that from becoming a straight line. I hope this encourages you to pull out your some collage stuff. And did you see what I'm doing here? I'm giving you advice and not following it myself. I'll leave that little guy for the end. Might need to patch a hole somewhere. Maybe I'll leave this guy here. Anyway, yeah, pull out some, especially if you have a lot of them. I know for a while there, I just was sort of on a mission to try to find those nicer Reader's Digest covers. So, sometimes when you're looking for something, that's exactly when it comes into your life. So I have a lot of those. And in fact, I guess that's what I should be doing, is just, get a bunch of them and kind of do a series of Reader's Digest books. And maybe some of these masterboards that I have done already could, you know, fall into place there and be useful to me. Oh, this is a vertical. Well, I can make that work there. Yeah, sometimes it's hard. Once you've ripped it out, it's hard to tell which way it's going. And again, you know, most of the time it won't matter if you put something in upside down, but I don't really want these birds to, if everything else is right side up, I don't really want these birds to be, oh no, I said I wanted it here to help cover up that text. Okay, what else can I use here? I can make this guy a little skinnier and make that fit in there. I think some people, and I've never really tried that, they really don't overlap any edges. It basically is just a butting up of edges, so that obviously keeps the paper from getting, you know, really thick. And I think that if a person, well, I guess it doesn't matter. I was going to say if a person was using like a cardstock or, you know, a solid colored paper underneath it, you could almost make that background paper work in your favor. But I suppose the same could be said with book page. Again, if a person didn't care about straight edges, could save a few milliseconds that way. If you've hung in this long watching this collage, then thank you. I guess if you've if you've left because you've seen collage before, then you're obviously not going to hear me say this. But yeah, it's understandable. Is basically what I was going to say. I had a very busy week last week with, you know, medical appointments and maintenance type appointments, like a haircut and so on. That I didn't get as far ahead in my taping as I kind of, that little comfort level that I like, to be about a week ahead. I used to be quite a chronic worrier about all sorts of things. And believe it or, well, maybe I'm the last one to know. Excessive worrying is not a good thing, and it interferes with quality of life. So I got some assistance for that, and it's surprising how much better a life can be when you don't worry about everything from you know, people boarding planes and driving down the highway and, oh my God, what if my internet goes down and I can't, you know, I don't get a video up, or, you know, like, there are, I guess the first really helpful thing that I ever read about worrying was in the Dale Carnegie book, and this was written, I believe, in the 40s. And I was reading it probably in the maybe 1980 or so. His premise was that 90% of the things that we worry about never happen. And the title of the book, of course, was that classic, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. And one of the things he said was to sort of like run, because it's I think it's impulse for many people to worry. So run through the scenario and sort of establish what is the worst possible thing that could happen, and figure out if the worst, if the very, very worst that you can imagine were to happen, would it kill you? Because that obviously is the ultimate. And if it doesn't, if the worst that could possibly happen couldn't kill you, wouldn't kill you, then you've already dealt with the worst possible thing. If there's anything you can do to mitigate the chances of this thing happening, I can mean taking actual action that could mitigate the worst happening, then do them. Either having a plan in place or taking a particular action, do it. And then put it out of your mind. So I guess in this scenario, or what I'm talking about here, if my worry, and it's not keeping me awake nights, but if my worry is, I'd fall behind in my YouTube taping schedule, then the best, most proactive thing I can do is tape ahead, tape and schedule. And if something were to happen anyway, despite that, well, I at least have the peace of mind knowing that I did whatever was humanly possible to be ready, to not let that happen. And if it did anyway, well, hey, out of my hands. So I think if a person kind of uses that to, this goes like this. If a person uses that strategy, that as a coping strategy or as a mindset, then it really eliminates a lot of the possible scenarios. Eliminates a lot of needless rumination. Just the endless loop of going over, well, what about this, and what about that, and what about this? That is very hard on the body and the mind, and it is so pointless, so very pointless. So, anyway, it's done, baby. It's done. And there are these couple of pieces left. And sometimes because I don't, see, those long fingernails just don't work. This, I think I'm going to not worry about because I don't really want to introduce that color. So we'll call that a scrap. And this, I can probably use somewhere. You know, maybe this is a little too blank here. So tear this into 2 or 3 pieces. And it, I mean, I guess the other option would have been to throw it in the garbage, and maybe a sensible person would have done that, but I never promised that I was a sensible person, so I'm just going to glue that over that. And then I know that, hey, I've used up every scrap of it. It is gonzo, and what more could anyone ask of me? What more could I ask of myself than to do that? Again, because this seems a bit naked along the edge here. And I didn't mind that in the beginning when I laid that piece down because it was showing the gradation in color. But I have this one, I'll put this here, and if I really want it to be goofy, maybe I'll get 2 pieces out of this. And it sort of closes the gap there. Sort of evens out the amount of white space, so to speak. Okay. If you're still here, thank you. If you're not, then that's okay too. And I'm going to call that one done. So I hope that you have enjoyed the weather report, the advice about worrying, and maybe picked up a tip or two about collaging. And I will see you guys again tomorrow, and I may just continue on this collaging technique, and maybe, who knows, you'll probably see another video at some point about related to this. Anyway, thanks guys. Bye.